Hello, you're listening to Transcending Sport. I'm Chris Stafford. Rotas is a retired academic and competitive tennis player who took up photography when she recognised that the media was mainly portraying people over 60 as either retired, redundant or immobile. She determined that it was time to shift the focus, instead of bemoaning the absence of positive pictures, and decided to portray the active and engaged aspects of senior life. She brought a camera, found a tutor, and made it her mission to be a sports photojournalist, covering a range of sports for seniors already, including the European Masters Athletics Championships, the Indoor Rowing Championships, squash and tennis. And I caught up with Alex at her home in the south of England to hear her story and her plans for the year. Alex, welcome to the programme.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, this is very much an area of women's sport that is less visible. So it would seem you've cornered a gap in the market here. How did the partnership between the sport and photography come about for you, Alex?
It happened because I'm a sporty person and I'm an older person. Well, when I hit 60, I decided maybe I was getting to be an older person. And I got interested in seeing what images were out there that focused on older sporty people like myself. And I did a Google search, and to my surprise, nothing came up. And the moment you put anything relating to older in that search, all you got were moribund pictures of older people in care homes, very depressing images. It's not to say that there weren't people doing what I am doing now. There's a sort of handful of us, but they weren't reaching the top of any search engines, and the visibility was really, really low, which made me think that, well, people just are they not interested in older people doing sport? Or are they not interested because they don't know? You know, there's a kind of circle there. So I thought, wow, well, anyway, there's a gap here, and wouldn't it be great to start taking some pictures and try to get them out there and raise visibility by, I suppose, informing a more general public that these events were going on. And what I discovered when I started doing a few just little exhibitions locally of my work was that people would say, oh, my goodness, this is so interesting. How come I never knew? How come we don't know about these people? I'd love to go and see them. And, I just realized that it was this kind of vicious circle of people not knowing, and therefore there being no interest. And given there was no interest, the media weren't going to put any money to sending people out there to photograph them. And it was just going round and round like that.
And were there any sports that you focused on initially, Alex, when you started photography?
Well, my own interest is tennis, and I've been a lifelong competitive tennis player. So I kind of assumed that was what I was going to photograph. But like all things in life, serendipity steps in. And the first big event I went to, which was a multi-sport event in Italy in 2011, it was called a Masters Games. So it had lots and lots of different sports, kind of like a mini Olympics. And it just so happened that on day one, I'd actually entered myself into the tennis thing, and I also got a press pass. But on day one, I just happened to be at the bus stop trying to get to the registration centre and completely clueless. And I was scooped up by this, the Irish sisters. They were Irish identical twins in their late 70s who came to the bus stop and thought it was hilarious that I was panicking there, and took me along. They were athletes, both of them, international older athletes. And they took me along, and then they dragged me along to the track and field stadium and pushed me in one of the gates and said, go inside there and take some pictures. And that was how it started.
So did you start off with any particular focus in mind, Alex?
Well, actually, my main goal was not to offend any official and not to get struck by a flying athlete or a javelin or something, because I knew nothing about track and field, so I didn't know the rules. So, the bar was pretty low with me. But then what I wanted to see and to try and focus on were the faces, and that's sort of what struck me, which was, as a beginner and an outsider to the sport, was the rather weird combination of people wearing track and field kind of skimpy little outfits, which we're used to seeing, the lycra and all that, but then being older. And I thought, wow, you put these together and you have to do a double take when you look at the image, because you think, oh yeah, I've seen plenty of people doing high jump. And then you take another look and you think, yeah, but I haven't seen plenty of people with wrinkly faces and wrinkly arms. So I guess that was what I was trying to focus on.
Now, did you have any preference to shooting black and white or colour? What were you seeing through your lens? Because I can imagine that this would really be inspirational. As a photographer myself, I could see this being really inspiring to do something different.
Well, again, the bar was very low. I was just trying to actually get a photograph that was in focus. I wasn't a photographer. I didn't know anything about photography. And when I started out and decided that this was a gap in the market I'd like to fill and jump into. I'd kind of forgotten that I didn't even have a camera. So I was on a very steep learning curve, and I found myself a tutor and kind of learnt the rudiments. But when I was in there, I was holding this camera that I really didn't totally understand, and that in retrospect wasn't truly up for the job. And my knowledge of photography was very limited, and my knowledge of sports was these sports was very limited. So it was a pretty kind of nerve-wracking combo, but one I like. I like being out there on the edge of my comfort zone, and I was certainly on the edge, way beyond it.
Where did your interest in photography come from? Did you have any experience in photography at all prior to this?
None whatsoever in taking photographs, but I'd been previously an academic in the field of visual culture. So I'd spent a lot of time looking at images and reading them as texts, sort of decoding images. So I knew about how the image worked, which really helped me when I came to take images of my own. But I knew absolutely nothing, nada, about photography. I didn't even know what an aperture was. I found myself a tutor, and I think she was totally bewildered by how anyone could know so little.
So when you found a tutor, how much guidance did she give you before you went out on your first shoot?
Well, she helped me, but now I look back, I can see that she very wisely helped me not get something super, super complicated, because I'm not the most techie of people, and suddenly, cameras are all singing, all dancers, they're dancing, they're very, very techie. So we got quite a simple camera, and I learnt my way around that, but actually it wasn't up to the job, because what was happening, I discovered with shooting track and field, was you needed to take very fast, very fast shots, very quick.
Yeah, high shutter speeds.
Those are the words I'm looking for, thank you. And thanks, Chris. So, that was, and my camera wasn't good enough. But if she'd have introduced me to the camera I've got now, which is all singing, all dancing, I wouldn't have been able to cope with it. It would have been completely beyond me.
Too many buttons.
Absolutely too many buttons. And so it was a kind of learning curve. But I still, to start with, found I could get, some shots, but I couldn't really get the action shots that I was after and that really interested me and that struck me as so different from the kind of tennis imagery that I was used to as a tennis player.
So what do you look for now?
What I look for now, I always want to make sure I've got the face, because the face is what shows a person's age. And I think what you see in a sportswoman's face is focus and determination, a real sense of lifiness, a real sense of being there, irrespective of age. And I absolutely wanted to get that lifiness, really, if I can call it that, because it's so in contrast to the kind of moribund, care home, slumped in a chair image. And I think that's what makes an older person, a person's face look interesting and attractive, and makes them think, well, I'd like to, hang out with this person, have coffee with them. They look full of life. So I always want to get that. I love to get the combination, if I can, of, say, somebody in their late 80s doing something improbable, like hurdling or doing long jump or high jump, something you wouldn't expect, or falling I love getting older women falling when they do long jump, because we're so used to the idea that an older woman on the ground, flat out on the ground, is something dangerous. We need to scoop her up and get her to A&E. But actually, you see these women in their late 80s, in their 90s, racing to do the long jump and falling on the sand, and they're right as rain. So it makes you reshape your whole concept of what aging's all about, which is one of my driving forces.
An enlightening comment, actually, on older women's sports, to get that perspective. And talk about the other sports that you've been covering, Alex, and where your travels have taken you.
Well, my travels have taken me all over Europe, as far as Turkey, France, Germany, various places in the UK, Scandinavia, and the other sports. I have photographed older people doing. I've photographed indoor rowing. That was a new thing for me. I photographed hockey. I photographed football, but that was men. I've photographed squash. I've photographed tennis. But I keep coming back to track and field. And I can tell you why, if you're interested. The reason for that is that with track and field, this is the way I figure it out in my simple mind. The person is naked. I mean, they come there. They don't have a racket or a bat they don't have any implement that can mask their fitness level. They've just got their body. So in tennis, you can be not in particularly good shape in your 70s or 80s, but you can still play a killer game because you can do a killer drop shot, but because you have racket skills. But in track and field, you've just got your body. And there's something really moving about that. It's simple. You take yourself to the starting line, they raise the gun, they press the trigger, it's go, and you just run. I mean, it's so naked, it's so straightforward. Or, you stand there and there's a bar and you have to jump over it, or you try and jump a particular distance. I find that very moving.
Yeah, it's a basic human sort of tribal instinct, isn't it? First thing to, flight or fleet, you run.
Yeah, I had not thought of it in those terms, but yeah, you're right.
In terms of getting published then, Alex, where have you marketed your work?
Well, that's a really interesting point, because when I first decided to do this, I felt I had to learn how to take a photograph. I had to get a press pass to these events, and I had to go and take photographs. And I hadn't kind of thought it through. I wasn't really very goal oriented. Well, I had those goals. And then when I first then had my set of photographs, and I thought, oh, great, I've got the photographs. And then I just thought, well, now what? How do I get anyone to look at them? And that was kind of back to the drawing board. So I started small and did some local exhibitions. I offered photographs to my local doctor's surgery, the reception there, and they really liked them. And somehow, slowly, they've got picked up by healthcare facilities, because people say that they're inspiring for older people who come to the hospital, who get sick. It's quite good to sit there and think, yep, there are people maybe decades older than me who are still doing this stuff. So healthcare facilities have taken them up. And it's just kind of snowballed, although that's probably too big a word to use. But I've just built it up incrementally. You start small and then people hear about you. And then I had actually, this summer I had a bit of luck. It was serendipity again. Because this summer I took some photos of a big event, which was the European Masters Athletics Championships in Denmark. And it was in August. And it just so happened I was being interviewed on a local radio show about some local older person's sports event when I came back. And the producer said to me, oh, did you have a nice holiday? Because we'd had to arrange it round me going to Denmark. And I said, holiday? What are you talking about? This is what I was doing. I was taking these photos. And he said, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. So let's talk about that rather than what we were going to talk about. And as a result, they asked me to send some photos for their website. We're talking local BBC radio here in the UK. And they put them up on the local BBC website, and the national BBC website got hold of them and liked them. And the interesting bit and the serendipity bit was it just so happened that it was at the same time as the World Athletics Championships for, youngsters. And so they were publishing photos of the World Athletics stars, and they profiled mine alongside. They said, meanwhile, this is happening, alongside. And that got me to that kind of got me to a big audience, really. I guess that's how it works. I mean, there's a bit of planning. There's a bit of, you try and put yourself out there, and then there's a bit of luck. And that's how it happens.
And then you had to drive people to your website, of course, where you have your portfolio, and they can buy your images directly online then, can they now?
They can buy my images. They can, I want to say buy me. I mean, they can more, I'm almost more interested, or certainly as interested, in people asking me to come and talk at their organizations or whatever, so I can show my images, so that I can make a virtual exhibition, because it's actually much easier to talk and show the images and get people to see a whole load of images than to cart them around and create an exhibition. And to be fair, I don't know that they're the kind of images that people would buy to put on their living room walls, because they're portraits, really. But they're portraits of people you don't know. That's why I think they're more suited to healthcare facilities or whatever. I mean, I don't want to put your listeners off buying them, but so please do buy. But I did a speaking tour in the States actually about 3 years ago, and I spoke at various retirement villages, and that was absolutely amazing. It was so interesting for me, because at the same time as getting my pictures out to people that were probably the same sort of age, I was also getting to see all these different retirement communities that you have in the States. And I was pretty blown away by that. And I would just, I love doing that. Love to do more of that. That's a plug, by the way.
Yeah.
I'd love to do more than that.
Shameless plug. Well done. And
shameless, yeah.
And of course, now in the digital area, one has to know about the software that goes with it. It's not just on the front end, it's the back end. We're no longer in the dark room, we're at our computers. So did you have to teach yourself the software to manage your photography?
Yeah, well, teach myself. I've got this team. I don't want to say team, that sounds very grand, but I've called on a load of people to help me. So my photography tutor, when we first started working together, she was 25. And then I had found somebody to help me with the what you call the back end, the post-production, the stuff on figuring it out on the computer. And, he's a guy of 30 and so on. So I've got a few people that I phone in a sort of panicked way, and they come and help me. And the plus of that is that not only do they help me technically, but it's giving me access to a whole tranche of younger people. I mean, that sounds like a really old person's thing to say, but I guess I'm going to be 70 next year. So for me, it's an added bonus to have these people who are in their, 20s, early 30s, come and give me a hand and joke with me and tell me about their lives at the same time. I mean, it's full kind of added bonus.
Now, how far do you plan about the events that you're going to? Do you have a schedule for the year?
Well, yes and no. There's the World Masters Athletics Championships this year is in Spain in September, and I'm going there, and that will be fabulous because people will be coming from the States, from Canada, from Australia, from New Zealand, literally from South America, from all over. And that happens, I think, every 4 years. And so anyway, I'll be at that. And I'm super excited about that. And in fact, I've got a friend whom I photographed. She's in the American team and she's in her 80s. But we discovered we share a birthday. And so she calls me her little sister. And she's a real star, I have to say. So we're kind of trying to figure out if we're going to stay at the same hotel or whatever. It'll be fun. I mean, at my stage in life, again, sounding ancient, if it's not fun, if I'm not getting all these add-ons, why do it? So I'm going to get some great photos, I'm sure, I hope. but I'm going to have a wonderful experience at that. But coming back to your question about how much do I plan, what I try and do is plan some bare bones, but leave enough flexibility so that I can just go with the ride, because I really don't know, where this is taking me. And for me, that's part of the fun. Did I know I was going to be talking to you, Chris, a couple of weeks ago? This is. I like to have the flexibility so that I can, be surprised and do things I'm not expecting. I don't want to just predict what the whole year is going to be, what I'm going to be doing all year.
Just to go with the flow. And in terms of commissions then, since people are now seeing your work and you're probably getting a reputation for this, Alex, are you getting commissions from publications and websites?
Am I getting commissions? I'm getting asked to go and photograph events, which I wasn't to start with. To start with, I used to have to sort of beg and plead, and say, can I come and photograph your event? And now people are coming to me and saying, will you come and photograph our sports event? So that's really nice. I'm also photographing some grassroots activity in my local community, which I'm enjoying incredibly. That's the kind of other end of the spectrum. And things are getting published kind of after the event. I mean, I was profiled in Canon magazine, the camera people, after they saw my pictures in the BBC. So they didn't actually commission me before, but then they saw my photographs and did a feature on me, and that was nice. I'm kind of on that cusp, I suppose, where I'm just starting to be commissioned, and especially for bits of filming. It's on the cusp, yeah.
It's starting to come, so you're going to very much be having a second career now. How long have you been doing it?
So since I turned 60, and I'm 68, 8 years now. And it takes that long, I think, which is a bit discouraging, actually, as you get to this stage. You think, oh my gosh, I hope it's not going to take another 8 years to. But yeah, it very much feels like a second career. It very much feels like I'm not retired, that's for sure. And there's a whole interesting thing about ageism that kicks in the way that people talk to me as an older woman, I suppose, that I'm kind of, as I'm doing this work, I'm feeling I am becoming, and I want to become more of an activist, because there is so much ageism out there. And I could give you an example. It just happened to me today, and I was outside and I bumped into somebody I know. And he said to me, so what have you been up to lately? And I thought, getting up to something is kind of like a little thing. I don't think would you ask that of a younger person? Wouldn't you say, what are you doing, or what are you engaged with, or what projects are you working on? But as you get older, people kind of ask you, like, how are you spending your time? How are you passing your time? What have you been up to? I'm kind of clocking that sort of attitude and not wanting to become really grumpy and say, what do you mean? What have I been up to? I'm doing earth-shaking stuff. No, that would be obnoxious. But to kind of just clock it and find some good way of replying, I don't know. Don't think I did find it this morning, actually, to be honest.
With the athletes that you're photographing, what has their reaction been to being photographed and published?
It's been so lovely. I think because they train all year, they train like any Olympic athlete, 24/7. And then nobody sees them, nobody bears witness to what they're doing, nobody publishes anything about them in the broader press, let's say. And so when I've had a few little successes, and got stuff out there, on the BBC or whatever, they're so thrilled. And it's very humbling, really. I realized at some point quite early on, I published a book. I wrote a book and published a book. And I gave a copy of the book to everyone who was in it. And that included some woman from Estonia in her late 80s, she was then, who was a world champion hammer thrower. And when I found her and gave her the book, we couldn't speak to each other. We had no common language. She went bright pink and there were tears in her eyes. And I thought, gosh, my job is actually bearing witness to these people, because nobody else does, actually. And it made me feel feel really good about it. And especially these field events, it's track and field. So track are the people that run around the track, but then there are the field events, which are things like throwing the hammer or the javelin or whatever. And they tend to be on stadiums that are just teeny weeny little ones. They're going on at the same time as the track events. And there might be a handful of people, mainly family, actually, to be honest, watching the track events. But there is nobody watching the field events. So when I'm there with my camera, they really like it. And they've seen me enough now, having done it for 7-8 years, that I'm becoming a familiar figure. So to start with, I think they were wary and they thought I was going to be trying to sell them my pictures. And when they realized that I wasn't and I was on a different sort of mission, they really like it. And there's a bit of banter. A few of them have said to me, well, you should start doing this. You should start running. And actually, I have started running. And because of the encouragement I got from some of these people. So I took up running when I was about 64, 65. And, I haven't discovered that I'm a brilliant champion runner. I struggle with it and I'm not a very good runner. But I like it because when I see them, they say, oh, Alex, how's your training going? And I kind of like to think that the bumbling around the local park that I do is training. It's pretty much anything but that. It's very haphazard. But that's been a fun thing. I'm getting a lot of unexpected add-ons from doing this. I didn't expect I'd get these new friends. And then I didn't expect I'd get another new activity, which is running, that I'd love so much. So it's constantly surprising me, and that's part of the fun, really.
Well, I was going to ask you exactly that, if they've inspired you to take up any other sports. So running is one. Do you have any other sports that you're following now or that you would like to have a go at? And then you would also like to photograph that you haven't done already?
Well, it tends to be that I do photograph them and then I think I'd like to have a go. So I was invited to photograph the British National Indoor Rowing Championships last month. And I I didn't know anything about indoor rowing. I thought, that's a weird thing. I mean, what on earth is indoor rowing about? And basically it was in the velodrome outside London. It was in this wonderful, wonderful venue. And it involves sitting on indoor rowing machines and being hooked up to big overhead screens where you end up competing with the other people who are rowing at the same time. So it actually does have it is a competition. And so I was photographing the rowers, and there were all ages there, and I thought it looked like really good fun. And I've tweaked my knee, actually, not running, but I've also recently taken up ballet. Can you believe it? And so I've tweaked my knee at that. So the indoor rowing is actually quite good on the joints. So I thought I'd have a go at that. And I have actually taken that up. I've started doing that, taken it up. That's a very grand way of doing it. I've bumbled along to my gym and I've had a look at the instructions on the website of the the Rowing Federation, the British one. I'm sure the US one's got a brilliant website. And I've kind of just started and I quite like it. In fact, I really like it. So I think I'm going to build that into my personal fitness regimen, if I can put it like that.
So who knows what the future holds then, Alex, as you find new sports that you can cover and that you might take up. So it's a whole new world for you. It's
totally a whole new world, and that's what makes it so fun. And I don't know if that's due to the fact that I'm at this stage in my life. When you're younger, you maybe have to control your career more. You're more concerned about, I don't know, your family, your bills and everything else. And as you get older, maybe you get a freedom. So I've just rather let go, and I'm letting it take me where it wants to. And I'm having a blast.
And you're blogging about it too on your website.
I am, but I am blogging a bit. I'm confession here. I see, it's another techie thing, doing the website. I have to get another nice young person to come and help me with the website, and I don't keep it up as much as I should. It kind of overwhelms me, the techie side, So I do blog, but not enough. I'm very inconsistent. Yeah. So, but I do, and I like to kind of keep track of my observations. Yeah.
And of course, it's well illustrated with your photographs too. So it sounds like you're having a lot of fun, Alex. And it's great that there's more coverage now of women in older women in sports doing so many different things and making them more visible. So thank you for your contribution. And maybe we can share some of your images on our website too.
Oh, that would be fab. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on the programme. We appreciate you taking the time and the very best of luck with it.
Thank you. Entirely my pleasure. Thanks.
And you can hear a lot more of these conversations from women who are transcending sport at wispsports.com and also by downloading Wisp Sports Radio on your podcast player. And as well as the 30 shows that we have at Wisp Sports Radio, we also have a new morning show on the Anchor app. If you download that on your mobile device, you can actually call into the show 5 days a week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm joined by different guest co-hosts to discuss the very latest news in women's sports. That's on the Anchor app. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, do drop us a line to info@wispsports.com. And you can follow us, of course, on all the social media channels at Wisp Sports. Until the next time, thank you for listening.